even the morning of his funeral, I was in Greece with four of my best friends, and before we met up with everybody else, and we hiked up to this amazing hill that overlooks all of Athens. And my girlfriends and I did a morning workout. I mean, it was a pathetic morning workout, but just moving our bodies and and being able to just get some of that endorphin hit really helped bring strength to me for what I had coming for the rest of the day. Again, it goes back to me stepping on that Stairmaster the day after he passed away, putting one step in front of the other for 20 minutes, just made me realize how resilient I am. And I'm not saying that you have to be strong, because there was a lot of times I wasn't strong. And I actually hate when people tell me that I'm so strong during all of this, because the one thing I don't feel is strong, like in a lot of different ways, I am a strong person. Like, but then it's interesting, like you being able just to put yourself through going 10 minutes of exercise when you really don't want to, you're building up that resilience and being like, I can do anything. Why not just go out and do a 10-minute walk? Because to your point, you're getting so many benefits from it. Yeah.
I want to start by talking about your business
Okay.
because I think it's interesting. I've been playing around on your website. Tell me about, first of all, how did you what was the catalyst for even thinking about starting a company? And then when you were thinking about a company, was it like you wanted to start a company and you were thinking about ideas, or did this idea pop up and you're like, oh, I've got to make this a reality?
So I've come from kind of a background of entrepreneurs. Both of my um, grandparents both started businesses and have run businesses. My dad has been at the same uh, job or company or university for 50 years. And I was in the corporate world in New York in the fashion industry for the first, uh, I would say, first 8 years of my career. And then um, my first job, I worked at a men's fashion magazine in New York. They closed the doors, and then that kind of forced me into the next thing, which then that company got sold. And then I kind of was just like, I want to go out and do things by myself. So I've been freelancing now for almost 12 years. Throughout that, I traveled a lot for work. So I just really was thinking about making my life easier, because living in New York, running my own business at the time, when within the freelancing perspective, I was like running around the city trying to get ready for my upcoming trips for work or for pleasure. And I was just like, this is so inconvenient. And at one point, I was traveling for 6 weeks straight. I had just broken up with my ex boyfriend, and I was living in London at the time. And I was just like never in the same city for longer than a specific amount of time. So I started finding myself sending products or sending clothes or sending skincare to my next hotel or to my parents' house, wherever I was going next. So I was like, this is way more convenient, but we can make this even more convenient. So that's where I decided to just take the risk. And I realized I'm not the only person out there struggling with getting ready for a trip. So I decided to launch 100 ml, which is a curated destination for modern travelers, where you can curate the best in skincare and wellness and create your routine on the go. A lot of people focus on their routine when they're traveling, especially people that are consistently traveling, or, you know, especially coming from Hillsdale, where we don't have, a Sephora or really, a big mall near us. We have to be driving, an hour and a half, or you're kind of limited. We have really limited options. So I decided to start this back in 2022. The idea came to me during COVID, and then about a year and a half later, I decided to launch it, and now we're almost 3 years old.
Cool. Yeah, I could see the convenience because, if you can't just if you plan ahead, if you're good at
Mhm.
planning ahead, fine. But a lot of us aren't,
Right,
or life gets in the way, or you don't realize,
totally.
oh, I thought I had extra toothpaste, or I thought I had this, and the idea that you could just get online, pick, and just it'll just be there when you get there.
Yeah, and we cover everything from kind of the necessities, skincare, obviously, but it's like your basics, face wash, moisturizer, maybe some special products, but nothing like super intricate, because a lot of people with skincare, they really research, they have their favorites. We're kind of the in going directly to the brands, but then you're getting all different types of, boxes and deliveries, or a delivery might be missed. But then also like that upscale drugstore where we have your essentials, toothpaste, toothbrushes, shampoo, conditioner, body care. So, for us, we really are here to like, we understand that people love to maintain their routines, but you shouldn't be compromising your routine just because of what you have available. And our goal is to get into airports so we can make it even easier for people. Just go straight to the airport. We're looking to have vending machines, but also kind of 100 ml lounges where people can walk in, maybe get a haircut or a beard trim or your nails quickly done, because people are getting to airports earlier because of the crowds and travel is going up. But also, we want to be able to have it so that anybody can really come in and it's not just a very exclusive amount of people. And that way you can just wait until you get to the airport, get your products, use them on the plane, or if your bag goes missing, you would be able to access, 100 ml products in the arrivals area when you're like, well, my bag's lost and now I have to make a whole nother trip to go and like start you're already starting off your trip not on the best note. So we're just really wanting to make it way more convenient for travelers. Booking travel is so easy. You can do everything on your phone. Why not be able to like get everything you need on your phone and ship directly to it's wherever you're headed, or to your house if you want to use it on the plane.
That's interesting. What's been the biggest growing pain? Because you're not like, I have a local company.
Mhm.
You're somewhat international. There's got to be. I mean, I can't even. If you were asking me, like, what do you think the problems I would
Mhm.
run into? I'd be like, I have no clue. Like, is there a problem shipping overseas?
We do ship overseas. Obviously, it's a challenge, especially now with tariffs, where people can still order, but people are going to have to pay for customs. So that's not ideal. We don't have distribution overseas yet. Our da- our consumer base is really, a lot of it, majority of it is in the US.
Mm.
I would say a big growing pain is like doing it alone. I am a solo founder. I didn't want to bring on a co-founder just because bringing on a co-founder is very much like a marriage. And unless I found that person from the start, I don't necessarily I'm not I'm just not ready to bring it on. But then I also know that doing it alone is a lot. Some days I'm doing like 10 different things. My to-do list doesn't get any smaller. I've done really small friends and family raise. I haven't done I'm just going into my first official fundraising. We're looking to raise 1 million. I say I'm looking to raise 1 million. And so it's a lot of conversations with investors. It's building relationships. But I would say like the hardest thing is just kind of doing it alone. Being a founder it can be very lonely. I don't have a full team. I have a team of advisors that I love and really respect so much, and they're there for me. But really at the end of the day, it's really hard because I love to collaborate with people. So whenever I bring in different brands or different partners, it's always, how can we grow this relationship? Always, we can start small, but we can always grow it. So, for me, the biggest growing pain is definitely like doing this by myself sometimes.
If you were gonna bring on, let's say not bring on a partner, but you were gonna hire someone, what's your biggest pain point? Where would you hire first?
Um, I definitely think we would hire within the marketing or partnership realm, just because I am somebody who loves to learn. Like, I love learning about new things and I love challenging myself. And I think a lot of the things that I'm learning building this company, you don't learn in school or you don't learn in college. It's like very much off the cuff. So I would say definitely when we raise, we're going to be bringing on somebody within the marketing and partnerships, world that maybe can kind of live in both roles.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel the pain of, like, running a solo business, because there'll be sometimes when, since you do everything,
Yeah.
I'll be like, "Oh, man, sales are down, marketing's not supporting
Yes.
sales," and I'll be like, "Wait, I am marketing."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You end up having a
Yeah,
meeting with yourself and you're just like,
totally.
"Okay," from a sales perspective, and then from a marketing perspective, and then you're like, "Wait, what about finance?" So now you're the CFO
Yep,
and then the CEO. Is that practical? You know what I mean? Like,
yep,
you end up, like, talking to yourself and saying, like, after a meeting, a meeting,
Yep.
sometimes I feel like I haven't gotten anywhere. Like, wait, like I can't agree with myself
I
saying
know.
that happy.
But isn't it so interesting being a solo founder and also running your own business? Like how you like can wake up and have a bunch of fires to put out, and then by like 3 p.m. that same day, you've put out like a majority of those fires, and you kind of feel like that little ounce of like, hell yeah, I did this. Like I got through these like tiny fires, or maybe one huge fire, but you were able to put that out by yourself, and that is like I think really, really rewarding. I've always said to myself, I don't look at challenges as like a negative thing. I look at it as a way for me to like learn something and to turn it into a positive. And that has been, I think, one of the biggest rewards, like actually running my own business. Is like you have to sometimes take a step back, even when you're wearing the like CMO role, the CFO role, and you're having these like challenging conversations because you will have those when you have a team, right? At some point. But then you're like, I'm doing this. And that's kind of a really cool thing to take a step back and just like give yourself a pat on the back for a minute.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the stats are, but I would imagine you having a company for 3 years puts you in like the upper echelon of companies that have survived long enough to make it to 3 years. You
I would
know,
hope so.
I think that's impressive because a lot of things just die out, you know?
They say only like 10%. I'm pretty sure those odds are probably getting smaller, like survive. But I would love to look at those types of statistics, but the thing is like, for me, comparison is like the biggest evil. I have to limit myself as much as I love to champion other entrepreneurs and other founders on LinkedIn. Sometimes I have to like really limit myself because I am comparing myself to a completely different business. I'm a consumer goods business. I should not be comparing myself to a tech business that can raise like 20 million in a series A raise and already has like 300 members of staff.
Yeah.
Um and I think the thing is like we are there's no like everybody has their own level of the term failure, and I don't know. I mean, I running a business is really hard. There has definitely been times where I'm like, what am I doing, and should I just like close up shop? But then I love it too much. And I've put in so much of my own investment. And also like I have friends and family who believed in me and believe in me and support me. So it's I am a people pleaser. And I am oddly trying to please myself with just keep going as well, but also the people in my life that have been really supportive.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you stay in the game long enough,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's almost like you can't, you could fail. There's always been
Mhm.
potential for failure, but if it doesn't break you and you just keep going and in 10 years, inevitably you're going to be more successful. And if you just keep going, I feel like that's maybe the hardest part of entrepreneurship is the highs are the highest highs,
Yeah.
but the lows are the lowest
The
lows
lowest.
where you're just like, I don't even want to go to work today, but I've got to answer 30 emails. I got to make 10 phone
Yep.
calls. I have to go do this marketing event. And then, like, for me, I have to see patients. Like, I have to, like, snap into clinical mode, and I have to be 100% present
Yep.
because that's the thing. If I'm not there, that's who I'm there for. So if all of the other stuff affects the product or the service, then who cares how good your social media is if you can't provide what you say you can provide? So I think that like making that shift like on a dime sometimes you have 90 seconds to turn into someone else.
Yep.
But like you said, when you make it happen and you face all those challenges and then you have it doesn't even have to be a good day. It could be a day that you didn't quit. You're like, oh,
Literally, the amount of times
I'm good.
especially in this last year, or like few months, I've had to like be like, you didn't quit today, you made it. Like, and that needs to be enough. You know what I mean? And like, your to-do list never gets shorter. And my like, I'm a big list person, and I love the feeling of like crossing off. And like, my list does not get any shorter. But you can't like you can work as many hours as you want, but that list isn't getting any shorter. And like, I'm really big on work life balance. Like, don't get me wrong, leading up to the launch, and there have been days where I've worked until 11, 12 p.m. at night, or excuse me, 12 a.m. at night, or 1 a.m. And I'm like, and I wake up the next day and I do that again, maybe. But that, like, that's where I then fall off of my own routine. And I like don't go to the gym, which is really important to me. And I don't eat healthy and I don't get the sleep that I need. So I've been really working and I don't know what the term right now, people are calling it like soft founders, but I'm not somebody who's just gonna sit there burning the burning the wick at both ends in order for me to get somewhere, because I might not even get that far. If I maybe work really focused for, those 8 hours or even maybe 6 hours in a day, but I get through a lot more because I'm working during my, like, very productive time, and I was able to go to the gym, and I was able to sleep and eat properly and take the breaks when I needed to like, fuel my life. I'm more productive than if I work until 1 a.m. because that then just gets me into a vicious cycle. So it's it's really finding that balance, and, like, my biggest thing is never comparing yourself and what works for you versus what works for other founders or other people, because you're you're wired so differently than anybody else. The way my brain works isn't the way your brain works, and vice versa. And, like, if you and I probably tried to stay on the same schedule, one of us wouldn't be successful, right? So, for me, I always tell people, like, and whenever I have, like, freelancers working with me, I always ask them, "What are your productive times? What works for you? You're a mom? Okay, when works best for you? Morning or evening? So I can, like, align with you and we can at least jump in and have a call together." And it's the same of, like, when does it work to have my meetings with partners or brands? And of course, I am flexible at times, but, like, really, it's when I'm really productive in the morning. So I like to get my work done in the morning and have my calls in the afternoon. Um, so it's like, you really can't be so hard on yourself and, like, thinking, like, working longer is harder and, like, you're getting more productive, because that might not be the case.
Different personalities for
Yeah,
sure.
100%.
I have had a mentor for the last 5 months, and when I was looking at mentorship groups
Mhm.
and looking at the different personalities that they were trying to attract, um, there was there's two, and I don't know if it's the same in your business. There's basically two thought processes. There's one where you're talking about like where you're all in, and I think the best term for it was like burn the ships, like Cortez, like get there, you burn the ships, there is no going back,
Mhm.
and that is all in commitment, 100%. And I feel like those types of mentors and those mentorship groups, they don't want to work with anyone who does not have that level of commitment.
Right.
And I was looking at what they were doing and I thought, that is, I feel so confident that if I did that, I would succeed, but I don't know if I would survive it. I like it doesn't fit within my lifestyle right now, but it does, my personality could fit that. I just can't with kids and with everything going on. And then I found another mentorship group that was employing mentors that they would do both.
Mhm.
They were willing to work with people who just wanted to to grind and burn the candle at both ends, but they were very open about that there are people who are going to go in part-time to build a business, and they just have different timelines. They have different expectations. They're not going to have the same trajectory. It doesn't mean they won't be as successful. It doesn't even mean that they won't be as successful as quickly as the other people, but the path is different. And I think there was that understanding. It seemed like there was that understanding where I wasn't going to be pressured into doing certain things within a certain timeline. And I
Right.
feel making me feel like I was less than because I wasn't grinding through the way that they wanted to. And I was very actually happy that they were everyone was very specific about who they wanted to work with, because it allowed me to pick a group and a person who I was like, okay, I think this relationship can work. And it has. It's been really helpful to have a mentor. And is that something you have people you go to for those things?
Yes, I have different advisors for different sections of my business. And then I have this amazing, like, I have my mentor from when I was in the fashion industry, and I worked for him for almost 12 years, and he's like a brother to me at this point, but, like, when I'm having, like, a really bad day or, like, I need somebody just to really, like, kick my ass and be like, give me a pep talk, I go to him. But then I have somebody who is a newer mentor or, like, advisor to 100 ml, and I met with her in New York last week, and she's just like she pushes me in all the right ways, but then also is like, "How are" like, before we get into business, like, "How are you?" And, like, that's also really nice because I think with, like, business mentorships, it's amazing to have somebody, like, pushing you, but at the same time, we're human,
Yeah.
and it's nice to have somebody, like, check in on you. Um, but she is like, I don't have one person that's, like,
Yeah.
pushing me. I think when I get into more of, like, I have staff and everything, I really am gonna wanna bring on somebody and work with, like, kind of a just like a like a CEO coach who can help me with, you know, the growth of a team, being the best leader for myself. I've been a leader in different positions, but, like, being, like, a leader in the sense of being a CEO where people are everybody's reporting into
Yeah.
you, um, is really important, and I wanna make sure I'm my best version of myself so that can trickle down to the rest of the team.
Yeah, because if you're not happy, I don't know how you can create a good work environment.
No, and I mean, I've worked with so many different types of companies with different types of leaders, and I know what I wanna be and I know what I don't wanna be, but it's something where, like, now, especially in the work culture, like, environment culture is so big, office culture is so big, like, there's a lot of opportunities out there. The different generations expect different things out of their employers now. So I want it to be a really positive. I want people to feel motivated. I want people to be excited. But also at the same time, I realize like for a lot of people, it's not their business. You know what I mean? Like it's my business and I can't expect every single person to walk in feeling like it's their business. So, I think it'll be a nice adjustment. I'm really being optimistic and hopeful right now that I will have this team, which I know I will. But um yeah, I think that's a huge part of it too, is, like, really realizing that, like, everybody who comes into your world, that is to some people, it's just a paycheck. You want that passion to be there, and it has to be a element of passion, right? But at the same time, like, it's not their business. So it's, like, kind of figuring like, what those expectations from those people.
It's one of those things where it's like, hey, I think you can buy that from them too with bonuses, but even more so than that, if it's just based on bonuses, someone will inevitably pay more money than you will pay.
Yeah.
So you're going to lose those types of people. But there's the type of people who's like, if you're one of those CEOs who listens, not just hears people, but you listen and you question and you go, that's a good idea. Let's run with that. You take point. And then if it succeeds, that's that's you. That's your then it is kind of their business because it's like that's their legacy within it. And they would
Totally.
want to see that as opposed they want to see it succeed because they were the ones who created it.
Right.
And then you can leverage the good ideas that inevitably you're going to miss because you're only focused on finances today,
Right.
or you're putting out some fire and you can't see like the obvious home run that could be hit. But if people feel like they're not empowered, they're
Yeah.
just gonna be like, "Oh, she won't listen anyway." So I think, like, if you can cultivate that those are the kind of people I like working with where they're like, "Hey, there's a problem. How would you solve it?" "Oh, I would do this." Like, "Okay, this seems logical. Go do that and tell me how it goes." And it's
Right.
like, "Oh, that's a lot of trust for your company to tell me that I can solve this problem for you." And when you don't wanna let them down,
No, totally.
and I think those are fun environments to work in.
The trust is a big that I think, like, you hit that nail on the head is, like, that is the biggest thing, right? Like, is the trust and giving people that power to feel like they're being trusted, um, because if you don't trust that person, then what's the point of having them there? You know what I mean? Like, you hired them, so give them that opportunity to show what they're capable of and why you hired them and had them be part of the team.
The last battalion commander I had in the Marines was like that. I wish I had him earlier. He was
Mhm.
unlike anyone I've ever worked for. Not what you would think of from the military, but he was just like very much like, all right, well, you got to this position because apparently you're good at stuff.
Yeah.
Here's a problem, come up with a solution.
Yeah.
And I would come up with a solution and he'd be like, okay, what resources do you need to make that happen? And I would tell him, and he would be like, if he could, he couldn't. If he couldn't, he couldn't. And he'd be like, okay, this is what you have available. This is the timeline that you set. Go make it happen.
Yep.
And I never had such a hands off superior, but at the same time was constantly in the loop.
Mhm.
And he hated meetings. So he never like, don't schedule meetings with me. Just come talk to me. We'll get coffee. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of one of those things. Like I felt like he always knew exactly what was going on. And I had maybe like one meeting a month with him officially.
Right.
We were just constantly talking.
Communicating.
And the more success I had, the more resources he allocated to me, and the more he had my back to the point where I felt like we could do anything.
Right.
And we actually did accomplish something quite interesting. And he got um, called out in a good way by a general one time, which he told me. It was at a meeting, like congratulating him. And he's like, I threw your name out there. You did it. He's like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
You did everything. But at the same time, I didn't really technically, I was an officer. I didn't really technically, like my Marines did everything.
Yeah.
I was just there with them, supervising them. I came up with the plan,
Mhm.
but then they got a bunch of credit. And so that credit, he deflected it all and let it all just roll downhill to us. And, you know, it was, I think I only worked with him maybe for a year and a half and then I got out, but it was one of those things I was like, man, that's a really interesting leader and definitely not what you would think of from like a military leader and
Right.
probably not what you would think of from like a corporate CEO where they're just like, all right,
Kind
you
of
know,
like that open door
yeah,
policy of just like constantly being in communication and wanting to hear the updates
yeah. Cause he would have to
over.
own my failures. That was another thing where I was at some point, you know, you realize pretty quickly, ooh, if I let him down,
Yeah,
this affects his career as well. He is actually giving me the ability to have a negative impact on him.
of course.
And when that happens, it's well, you stay up a little bit later, you work a little bit harder because you're like, man, my boss trusts me.
Exactly. And you know that even though when you get that trust, it comes with a lot of responsibility, obviously. So, I mean, that I think is when you get when you get that type of trust from somebody who's superior of you, I think that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So you might be recruiting someone right now. Maybe someone at some point's listening to this, and they're like, "Oh, I
hopefully.
want to work for her."
Okay, yep, come on down.
Yeah. I will put all of your contact info in the
Yes,
description.
yep,
So if anyone's listening to this and you want to order anything from 100 ml, or you're looking for a job
yeah.
and you want to, even if Kay's not hiring, I'm sure you can get on her at the top of her list when she has the resources. But sounds like a fun. It sounds like one of those companies where it's like you have a clear purpose, you have a clear demographic, you have a goal, but there are a million different ways to solve the infinite number of problems you're going to run into. And what makes me think of the problems are like the logistics. You know, I had listened to a podcast with the founder of Whoop, you know, the Whoop man,
Yeah.
and he was talking about he was like straight out of college starting this, and everyone was saying, you can't do this.
Hmm.
You're not an engineer. You don't know anything about tech. You have no money, and you're going up against Apple and Nike.
Yeah.
How you think you're going to produce something and beat out Apple and Nike? And he was like, I don't know how it's going to work, but I will do it. And he did it. I think Whoop now is more popular, and he was talking about he solved a bunch of problems that they didn't think he was almost more in tune with what the end user wanted
Yeah.
in a way. And he was like, yeah, they're not solving the right problems. And he did it in an interesting way, made a cool brand
Yeah.
to the point now where Whoop competes like you people will say like, well, I'm not gonna get an Apple Watch, I'll go to Whoop. So he did it. And so I think like you're going up against, you know, obviously people there's like Amazon, there's a
Hmm.
lot of stuff out
Yeah.
there, but the ability to provide something that's unique um, to the right kind of person, because there's a lot of people who are they don't need Whoop. It's too and there's too much there.
Yeah.
So they're going to gravitate towards Fitbit or Apple or just something. But there are a lot of people who look at that and go, "Oh, that's a cool founder. That's a cool company. They're solving a problem that I have in a very unique way.
Yep.
I wanna support that, and they will go look for those opportunities to purchase from a company like that.
Yeah, and I think also it's just at the end of the day, like, you put your consumer hat on because we're all consumers, and we are starting these companies because we are consumers. So for for me, it's I always listen to the consumer. I wanna talk to the consumer. I talk to people all the time in airports. I'm the girl that, like, strikes up a conversation if I'm standing in line for too long because I wanna know, like, how people are preparing for a trip. Would they shop in and get everything in the airport if they could? And slowly, slowly, the more conversations you have, the better it is. And I don't think, I mean, of course, we're doing as much as we can, but like there's always room for improvement. And I think it's important to be asking those challenging questions that you might get negative, quote unquote, negative answers about a business or the answer that you don't necessarily want to hear, but that's how you learn. So, um, yeah, we'll see. I'm really excited. It's been really fun to be on this journey. It's challenging, it's draining, it's rewarding. And like you said, the highs are really high, the lows are really low, but you gotta take any little win, because that can just pick you up on a really bad day. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I like talking to other entrepreneurs because we have so many things that are the same, but also like as you said, the unique challenges depending on because you're doing products, I'm doing a service. Some people do business to business type stuff.
Yeah,
So it's like it's infinitely different, but also like the foundationally it's like the same stuff keeps us up at night. You know what
totally.
I mean? So it's kind of just like almost therapeutic to talk to someone and be like, oh,
Always.
that's how I feel.
I love talking to other founders
Yeah.
in different industries and different specialities because I can learn so much from them. And like a lot of the time, like there's a really small pool of us and we're doing a thing that most people don't have the guts to do and also don't have like anybody can do it, right? It comes down to are you brave enough to do it? And I'm not saying if you don't do it, you're not brave. Everybody's brave, but like it's scary. Like you put a lot on the line. You feel responsible for livelihoods, you feel responsible for making this thing a success. You're really your own cheerleader, like, at the end of the day. Um, so, like, I always tell people, "Just do it." I'm like, "If you have an idea, why not try it?" And if it doesn't work, and you really believe in, like, the bigger skeleton of the business, pivot. Like, at one point, if we get another pandemic, we're gonna have to pivot. Am I terrified? No. Yes? I don't know, like, what's scary anymore? Who knows? But, like, at the end of the day, like, for me, I am until I'm like, "I absolutely don't wanna do this ever again, and I don't wanna do it," I haven't failed. And if it brings me happiness, then why stop doing it? So, yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's such a hard thing, but also so rewarding.
Mm.
And I feel like when as you get better at business,
Mhm.
there like especially the entrepreneurs side of it, other things in life, you almost pick up life skills
Right.
because it
Completely.
puts things in perspective. So putting your time in perspective is a big one because now it's like, okay, my time has an actual value on it. So where, because like if this doesn't run efficiently,
Mhm.
then I lose time with my kids.
Yeah.
Where I lose time I don't get to go to the gym. So when someone's like, "Hey, can we talk later?" It's like, "Well, talk about what?" Like what's the like how long cuz this could affect my health. It could affect my relationships. It could affect everything else because I do everything.
Yeah.
I can't just be like, "Oh, call my secretary and get a meeting with my CMO,
Right.
and you guys can let me know and send me." You know what I mean? Like that. I
Totally.
am all of those things. So when people now are like casually, because it's different if you work and you get a paycheck, And so when I interface with other organizations where people are employees, there and if there's nothing wrong about it, it's just the different culture. It's like, well, I'm being paid to be here 9 to 5, so if I have time for another meeting, I have time for another meeting.
Right.
But it's not like 9 to 5 for what I do. There are tasks that have to get done. So, is what you're asking me to do valuable?
Right.
Or and if it's not valuable, how do I, like, very tactfully and respectfully communicate that it's not something that I'm interested in or I don't wanna, like, how do you say no nicely? You know what I mean? And
Totally.
move away from certain opportunities without offending people, you know what I mean? But also quickly and abruptly because other things have to happen. And I find that really challenging
Mhm.
because I'm really good at saying no. I'm just really good at saying no in an aggressive way that gets people away from me. So sometimes I'll be like, "Oh, I handled that well." And I'll be like, "No, think about it. That person's never gonna. I'm not gonna hear from that person for a while. That was a little rough." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they don't know the backstory of what's going on in my day, or like, you know what I mean. And I'm not going to sit there and spend 90 seconds explaining how hard my day has been. Sometimes it's like I'm just too short with people, and and it makes me feel bad sometimes because, you know, people don't deserve that from me. Um I don't know. We have different personalities too. So you're like kinder than I am, I think.
Well,
You
Chris,
smile more. So,
the thing is that I have a really hard time saying no. I am a yes person to death. And that doesn't work in my favor all the time. So I'm actually really envious of you to be able to just abruptly say no. Like I wish there were so many times I could just be like, no, sorry, we're not interested. And instead I'm like, yeah, like sure. Because for me, and again, like it's very different. I think also probably the calls and inquiries you're getting are very different from what I'm getting. And I'm like, this could lead to something.
yeah.
But then I am somebody who I'll always take a call only because I know if I'm getting on that call, and if this has happened to me before, there's like a company that wanted to pitch us for like sales. I'm like, you guys have zero idea what we do, but sure, let's get on a call. And it was well sketchy. Within the first 5 minutes, I knew this wasn't what I needed to be on. And I then abruptly was just kind of like, look, I really appreciate you reaching out and I really appreciate you taking the time. But this is just not I don't think we're aligned in our business strategies. Again, really appreciate it. If I'm interested in talking to you again, I would love to reach out. I'm really sorry. I just don't think like I want to save time for you and I want to save time for myself. And they were like, okay, that makes sense. And so that was the first time I did that. And I was really nervous, but I was also in that headspace where I was just kind of like, I don't have time for this today. And I was on back-to-back calls where I wasn't even gonna be able to work. I maybe had, like, 3 hours of like, being able to get my long to-do list, at least 4 tasks done, and I still didn't even get through that. So I was just like, "Why waste the time?" And also it's just, like, sometimes it's good for both parties to just be like, "No." Um, but yeah, like I think I'm envious. I'm really working on saying no, but it's hard because I am such a yes person.
Well, I think something that I like to do too because I don't want to be that person who gets shut down. So I just try and add value to interactions, and it could be something as simple as if we're going to meet, do you want to get coffee?
Yeah,
But for other businesses, if I want to talk to them, I try and find creative ways to make it, you know, immediately beneficial for them. Not like, oh, this might turn into something. It's like, no, I
of
I
course.
want this to be I see something that maybe you don't see. How can I add value right now without asking for anything in return? And I think this is stuff that comes from like having a mentor, like,
Yeah,
hey, this is how you should approach people. So when people don't do that to me, again, it's not like a judgment. It's just like I don't see the value. I don't have time. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that and also I think too, like you said, like, you have kids, you have a wife, you have a family, you have a life, like, and you have your health, that's all very important to you, and if somebody isn't bringing something valuable to the table, I don't see the purpose in saying, "Yeah, sure, let's get on a call."
Yeah.
Um, that also you could circle back and reach back out when you do have time and be like, "Hey, I'm really sorry I would love to catch up with you now, like, let's go for a coffee," or, you know, "This is what I think could be an interesting conversation for us." But if somebody's coming to me to have a conversation, I agree, like, with founders, it's different. Some people just need, like, to vent or, like, commiserate or whatever, but when a partner or a brand is coming to me, it's
Yeah.
very clear on, like, what we're having that conversation around, but there are times where I'm like, "So why am I getting this call?"
Yeah.
And I'll be like, what do you wanna talk about?" Just so I know, and then also then I can schedule it for it to be either a 15-minute, 30-minute, 45, an hour-long call, and you never know what can come out of it. So
That's been the benefit of the podcast actually, because it just adds value. People because I get to promote other people's stuff, and there's social media that comes out of it. So I have had some guests on who don't have time. I've had like Nikki Ellis, our pediatrician, who does
Mhm.
not have time. She's
Yep,
also the chief of staff of the
yep,
hospital. She's in helping deliver babies.
yep.
She's got kids. She's across, what I mean? Like there's so much going on in her life. And I've been able to get her time, but I feel like I try and give something back. And same thing with other people, other professionals where I get to, some of them I don't even know, I'll just DM them and be like,
Yeah,
hey, this is what I can offer. Would
exactly.
you be willing to give me, 90 minutes of your time to talk about a topic? And it's very positive, I think, usually. And I think for a lot of people who are in our situations, you do have to reserve a certain amount of energy for your customers
Yeah.
and for me, for patients. So like when I'm thinking about how much like how much I can give in a day,
Yeah.
there's like my family and I've got to reserve that. And then what's my patient load because they get 100% when I'm with them. And then there's like the inevitable stuff like paying bills, like the tasks that have to get done. And then whatever's left, is there a value to it? And a lot of times, if there is anything left, it's like, could I just have 30 minutes to like read a book and have a cup of coffee and have no one talk to me or take a walk? Sometimes it's like, I am not accepting this call, or I'm not going to go to a meeting, or I'm going to cancel something that's not a patient, that's not my family, just to like detach and go think or do something I like to do.
Yeah, but that 30 minutes of you doing something that would be good for you is refilling up your cup to be
Yeah.
able to show up for the patients, to be able to show up for your
Yeah.
family, and that is so important.
I think so, and I think that's where, like, the balance comes in, and so I
Totally.
forget who I was talking to about it. I think it might have been my mentor, might not have been. We were talking about work-life balance, and it was like, you can't really think of it as a balance because it's definitely gonna be imbalanced, but you gotta think about it as, like, what's the line you can't cross? And then so the day might be 75% business, but that 25% you're gonna detach and you're gonna go family, or
Yep.
you're going, I don't know, to a concert, or
Yeah.
you're not gonna look at work stuff, and that's gonna be your balance, even though it's incredibly imbalanced. You've you've set aside that time. I think the hard part is, like, social media. Honestly, I mean, I think we've been talking about getting the brick at home just so, like, because I use it so much for work, and now there's definitely an addiction to it where,
Oh,
like, I
yeah.
didn't used to use it a lot, and now I post reels almost every day, so I'm just constantly thinking about social media and looking at social media and, like,
Totally.
getting ideas, and I find myself compulsively and here I
Going to the app.
yeah, and I contribute to the addiction, which is, like, the hypocrisy of it because 'cause I'm the one spitting out content that
No,
people
I
are, like
know. I
are
know, and
looking
then
at.
I totally understand that. I mean, I am so bad at that balance, even though if it's like 75,
Yeah,
80% work, and then the rest is trying to figure out what makes, whether that's working out or spending time
yeah,
with my family or travel, like, taking time off. And I'm so guilty of like when I'm traveling, I will work. Like I am not good at shutting off. And my mentor last week and a few other people were like, "You just need to go someplace and not be on your phone, not be on your computer, not be around friends, not be around family, just you," and, like, figuring out what that looks like. And so I'm working on that. I'm trying to figure it out of, like, I know I can do it, it's just I love being around people, so I'm not good at the whole I travel a lot by myself, but I'm around other humans. I'm not good at being like, "Well, I'm just gonna go to this hotel and sit on the beach and not talk to anybody and just read a book," because that to me is that sounds relaxing, but I'm not used to that. So I'm gonna try to push myself to do that because I know it will refill my cup, so I'm able to, like, actually perform even more efficiently.
Efficiency is the key because,
Mhm.
if you can get the same amount of work done in less time
Yeah.
and then have time to do things that refresh you, then you don't have to necessarily burn the candle at both ends routinely. It's just emergency situations, obviously.
Totally.
But I think that's a good thing for a lot of people in life in general. It's something that I work with patients all the time on.
Yeah.
It's like, you got to make, they'll be like, I don't have to, they're dealing with pain or some health issue. And they're like, I don't have time to exercise, but I know I need to. And it's like, yes, you do need to, but they're like, I don't have the time or the energy. And it's like, okay, somehow we got to break the cycle.
Yeah.
So is there something you can say no to for this week? And then we can get in 20 minutes of movement a day or 20 minutes of reading, something that they value, because you might be surprised at how much more efficient you can be with the more energy and being able to check out. And that's something that I think is unique to physical activity and exercise and
Mhm.
movement, is that it drains you in a way because you're expending calories and like you do have to recover from it, but it also fuels you in a way mentally and physically where you feel refreshed. It also builds capacity, so you're better at it next time and you can actually have more energy out of it. Um, but it's so hard to break that cycle, especially if you've been in it for decades,
So hard.
you
It's
know?
hard for me even if I don't work out for, like, a week because I'm traveling or
Yeah.
something, and, like, even when I travel, sometimes I'm like, I'm jet lagged and I don't even feel like working out, but I'm like, even if I just move my body for 10 minutes, that will trigger endorphins. So I'm like, minimum, I have to do 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And but then after the 10 minutes, I'm like, I could just do a little bit longer because like I'm actually enjoying this now and I'm feeling better and it's waking me
Yeah.
up. It is just so much about breaking that cycle of like not prioritizing it and not because as soon as you do it, you feel better for it.
How has activity been as far as, like, dealing with everything with recovering from Yorgos and
Yeah.
from that situation?
So for those listening, I lost my boyfriend very suddenly back in November 2024, so almost 10 months ago. Um, he was a young, healthy 35-year-old and just got taken from us by a heart attack. It was a blood clot that traveled to his heart and caused a very fast and sudden heart attack. So I have really what's crazy is the day after he passed away, um, I was staying with my girlfriend and she's my best friend and she was like we used to go to we work out together all the time and I I was like I woke up and of course I was like unhinged because I hadn't slept and because it was so sudden and he's Greek and it just sudden death is horrible because you're not prepared for it, let alone you don't know what to expect in terms of just the overall process of what that night entails. So the night it was an 8-hour night. I had worked, I found him at our apartment, and then, the paramedics came, and then the police had to come, and the coroners came, but I found him at, like, 4:50, and we didn't leave the flat until midnight. So that was 7 hours of just I don't even know what to call it, trauma, shock, I don't know. So the next day, I woke up and I said to my girlfriend, I was like, "Can we just go to the gym and I need to move my body?" She knows me very well, and she's like, "Do you wanna just go on the Stairmaster for, like, 20 minutes?" And I was like, "You know what? Yeah." Because in my head, I was like, the stairmaster represented what I'm about to go through, which is putting one step foot in front of the other, and just I had to just keep going. And so for me, in the last 10 months, I've always worked out. I've always been very active. I played sports all my life. I work out. And for me, as I got into my 20s and 30s, working out was about looking a specific way. That has completely changed. Um, Now I work out um, for mental health, to get energy, to show myself that I'm gonna be okay. Um, to show myself I can, like, do 10 more reps, or I can, like, that to me, if I can get through the worst day of my life, I can literally get through 10 a 30-second plank. Yeah, I know that sounds so stupid, but, like, it it builds, like, it really builds the determination in me. But for me now, working out is just moving my body. I really listen to my body if I'm tired, because grief kicks the shit out of you and you're exhausted a lot. For those who have never experienced it, I can't really put it into words the way your body feels, because you're no longer what you feel like before they passed away. And so I am extremely, um, I sometimes am just like, I'm going to do 20 minutes of like light Pilates. And like that does more for me than if I was like, you have to go on a 20-minute run, because that will make you that will make you burn more calories. So you'll look a different way. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'm a girl. So just give me a minute. But I have seen my body shift in ways that I've never thought it could. I am so grateful for the fact that I have the ability to move my body. I don't take it for granted in any sort of way, shape, or form. And again, it doesn't need to be this big, intense workout. It literally could be walking or doing stretching, because it's important just for me to move the stagnant energy.
Yeah. I feel like grief is one of those things that encompasses such a broad array of challenges
Mhm.
because you've got depression, you've got anxiety, you've got stress. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
all of those are interconnected, but they're all very unique.
Yeah.
And so there's obviously the stages of grief, which, that may or may not be a real thing. I don't know. But everyone probably has their own, at least to a certain extent, stages that they go through. But regardless of those stages, there's still like, I feel like a void,
Yeah.
and that void doesn't go away. So it's not like there's anything you can do it's not a fixable, grief is not like a fixable thing. It's something that's like the new normal, I
Yeah.
feel like. And I think a lot of times when people, I'm not a mental health professional,
Hmm.
but most of my patients have mental health challenges. Not that they're like even diagnosable, but if you're human, stress is a problem. And I think just denying that and being like, I don't have a stress problem, well, you're pretty rare. You know what I mean? And saying that like anxiety doesn't affect you. And it's like, no, it does. You may not have panic attacks and you may not even be even close to a diagnosable disorder, but
Hmm.
you know, there isn't, it does impact the way you interact with the world. And I think a lot of times when people come to me, they have pain and it's like, okay, well, what's everything that's contributing? And even if let's say you have an athlete who tears an ACL, and it's like, okay, well, you have knee pain and you're going to have surgery, but what is everything else that goes along with that? Do you feel like you're letting your team down? Are you stressed out and anxious about regaining your starting position? Are you going to lose a scholarship? Is there a financial impact? Is this a livelihood thing for you? Are you losing a shot at the Olympics? Are you like, what is this your identity? Is this the only thing that you've done? So to just say, well, let's just look at the tissue that's damaged. It's like, well, it's important, no doubt, but it's ignoring 90% of the person, you know what I mean? That's such a small part of it, and then what happens when there's no tissue damage? What happens when you just have pain? Because that just happens. You get an MRI and there's nothing. It's like,
Yeah.
well, it's all in my head? No, it's real. I mean, there's other things going on, and I feel like when people are dealing with things like depression or anxiety or stress, they can manifest as physical pain.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times that what that does is it decreases movement and you feel less motivated. You might feel like you want to hurt, like you might injure yourself by doing more. And so it's hard to get people moving again. And I don't think a lot of people realize, I think it's very intuitive that you were able to very quickly be like, oh, I should physically, I should move my body and it'll have that effect.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I mean, gosh, the amount of times I'll just be getting up from sitting and I'm like, this was much earlier on in the grief phase, like the traumatic grief phase
Yeah.
or the sudden grief phase, early stages of grief. Let's start there. Um, and I'd be like, oh, my hips, because women hold a lot of trauma and a lot of stress in our hips. So I started doing, before all of this happened, I was looking up somatic exercises and I found this woman and I should know her name, but I forget it. And then she's on Instagram. Uh, she's incredible. But I bought one of her like somatic um, workshops
Yeah. Yeah.
that you can just do at home. And I was doing this like last or 2 years ago. I started getting into it, and it's just really slow movements. And I started stretching more and doing more hip openers. And again, I think in my head, I was like, if I'm moving my body, I'm getting this stagnant energy out of me, or this like I'm moving this like I'm moving just energy through my body. If you believe in that, if you don't, that's also fine. And at that point, I was just grasping for anything to make me feel like something, because you just lose your identity. You lose a lot of yourself. And I mean, pain 100% manifests in so many ways. I mean, I remember going to the cardiologist when I came home after the funeral and for Christmas, and I was like, "My heart really hurts," and of course, I was worried that something was happening,
Yeah.
and he was like, "We can do an EKG, we can do an echocardiogram, we can take your bloods." Everything came back normal, and he was like, "You just have pain because of what you went through. Your heart is physically feeling broken right now because you are heartbroken." And it's interesting because, like, last week, I have, you know, grief comes in these crazy, and, I know you've talked about it and you've experienced it, these crazy waves, right? It's not consistent. Not every day you wake up feeling like horrible. There are some good days, there are some bad days, it ebbs and flows, and I think it's literally like an ocean. You're out swimming and a huge wave can just come crashing down on you and hold you under for a really long time. Last week, I was just having one of those weeks. I was explaining to my therapist, I was like, "I'm not really sad, but I mean, I'm sad, of course,
Yeah.
but it was a different kind of feeling I haven't felt in a really long time, and it was this pain in my stomach that I just felt like I was getting the wind knocked out of me constantly, and I felt like I was and my chest was tight, and of course that's anxiety, and of course that's fear, but it was really just the fact that I was reliving that heartbreak all over again, and it was manifesting in that part of my body. And of course, I'm a big person of breath work, um, working out helps a lot, but it's what's crazy is that our endorphins all come from our brain, and our hormones start in our brain, and they travel through our bodies. And I think that for me, anybody anybody who's dealing with grief, it's such a huge it can become such a huge part of your life. And I think we see a lot of people who deal with trauma and grief through some of these insane athletes that are running ultra marathons and everything. And I think that you go through something so sad and hard, um, you kind of do feel invincible. Like I really don't. I'm not very fearful these days, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but um, yeah, I think going back to what you're saying, the stress and anxiety and the pressure, it does manifest in our bodies, and it's important for us to recognize that the pain isn't just from a physical lifting too heavy or you stepped down off the curb wrong. It's because there are these social pressures, and with physical activity and or meditation or breath work, it can really help you relieve some of that pressure from those parts of your body.
I've had the opportunity to work with alongside a lot of mental health professionals, a
Mhm.
lot of counselors since I've been back in Hillsdale, and it's been awesome because it's changed the way that I communicate and the way I think about patient care.
Mhm.
And one thing that I remember early on, we were doing we were doing case studies, and I think all of the counselors had written the case studies. So there was one where it was like, you walk into a room, it's a dorm, and there's a
Mhm.
student on the floor, sweating, panting, clenching their chest on the ground. How do you proceed? And we were supposed to write it down. I was the only one who said, call 911 and get an AED. Everyone else was like, well, assess them for a panic attack. And because a counselor had written it, it was a panic attack. I would still argue that you should still call 911 and get an AED
I
because
100%, I would I if this was happening to me
yeah.
right now, I would do the same thing,
So
Chris.
they and I think everyone agreed with me, but they were
Mhm.
thinking it from their lens, and I was just thinking like, I don't do emergency medicine, but from like a sports perspective, you know, if an athlete goes down and clenches their chest, like I'm not going to mess around with that. We're
Yeah.
going to make sure. But anyway, the interesting thing is like, you think about it though. If we were going to line people up, three people, and this is not possible, but just like go with a
Yeah.
scenario, someone's having a panic attack, like an
Mhm.
extreme panic attack. Someone
Uh-huh.
else is having a heart attack and about to die, and someone else was just running sprints in the heat, and you were just having to look at them. They'd all be sweating, probably. They'd all be breathing. They'd all be like bent. They'd all
Yep.
look like they were in pain because the physical manifestation of all of those is very similar.
Yeah.
You might not be able to tell which one is which is such an interesting thing because with sprinting, you did that to yourself. With a panic attack, you're afraid of something that is not technically real, although you're manifesting that in your head. I'm not explaining that well, but that's kind of like what I think of like what I understand from generalized anxiety disorder is like you're hypersensitive and it's just like you're constantly thinking about things that could you're reacting as if like a plane is crashing when a plane is not crashing. And you can't, even though you acknowledge that a plane is not crashing, you cannot just like snap out of it. And then the other thing is a heart attack. So someone is literally dying.
Yeah.
There's like the old saying that like, what's the most common initial sign of a heart attack? It's death because most people don't survive their first heart attack.
Yeah.
That stat may have changed, but it's one of those things like, so you could have three people that look the same. One's having a panic attack, it's psychological. One's sprinting, exercise, and the other one is pathologically about to lose their life, but the physical manifestations are the same. It's just like when people present in pain, for someone to assume that like, I know the answer, you've got low back pain, it's got to be this, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it might be like statistically, but also like is like how much is that actually contributing though?
Right.
And we don't, and if you don't acknowledge all this other stuff,
Right.
and the interesting thing, when I teach physical wellness at the college, the main book that we go off of was actually written by a psychiatrist. And he talks about different things. He has chapters on it's about how he integrates physical activity with his medical practice. So he definitely prescribes medication, but he goes through all the different things. And for depression, I think it's kind of interesting because you had brought it up about like the different things that go on in the body.
Yeah.
And he says, and he talks about how exercise affects it. So he's like, we have endorphins. And if you consider those, like, there's like 40 types of them, and there's stress hormones, and they go throughout the brain and the body. And you've got opioid receptors in your brain and body, and that act as a way of like killing pain, so morphine like. So endorphins, which are everywhere, they calm your brain, and they can relieve muscle pain. So it's super interesting because and they create this euphoria of the mind that we commonly just we'll be like, oh, it's just a runner's high,
Yep.
but it's a real thing. So when you move more, aside from elevating endorphins, these morphine-like compounds, you regulate your neurotransmitters. The three specific neurotransmitters that antidepressant medication affects. And I think it says somewhere in the book that we know what we know about how exercise affects the brain from research in antidepressants because they compare them a lot.
Yeah.
So we know that, and I'm going to mess this up because I don't prescribe medication, but there's three neurotransmitters that they're trying to affect with antidepressants, and they can be quite effective, but they don't work for everybody. The interesting thing is that exercise can work in the same way. So if you think about, um, exercise immediately elevates norepinephrine, and so it wakes up the brain and gets people going. So it improves your self-esteem, which is a big component of depression, which can be a big component of grief. Exercise also boosts dopamine. So that's what we're talking about with like how I'm contributing to people's dopamine addictions on social media. So it improves your mood, your feelings of wellness, and it jumpstarts your attention system. So dopamine is all about motivation and attention, which is a big problem for people dealing with grief,
Yeah.
I think. And then you have serotonin, which is the big one for antidepressants, the SSRIs. So it's equally as effective. It affects exercise affects serotonin in a way that can be for some people equivalent to medication. And it's important. Serotonin is important for mood, impulse control, and self-esteem. And it also staves off the stress hormone cortisol. So, and this is not me advocating for people to not take their meds because even as a, I would say as a chiropractor, I am very agnostic to medication. I think our profession takes an anti-medication standpoint, which I think is unethical because it's not within our scope of practice to comment. So if people want to know my official opinion on meds, talk to your physician. I don't know. But I know plenty of people who take medication and get wonderful benefits. I know
Yeah.
people it didn't serve them.
Yeah.
I take prescription medication for things that I can't affect with lifestyle, and
Yeah.
I've tried.
Yeah.
So I think there is a time and a place for medication, and I think those conversations are best served with a prescribing physician. But you should also know, and this is something that like I hope this conversation adds to people, but there are things that can not necessarily replace medication, but can augment the effects because if your goal is to keep serotonin in the brain, and you're going to keep taking your SSRIs because it works for you, that's awesome, but you also have to know that you can get up and move more and have a similar effect on it. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both. But the cool thing about exercise is that there's no negative side effects. It has positive benefits on a broad spectrum of health. And if you're dealing with grief or depression or something like that, like it can have an immediate effect on morphine like substance and neurotransmitters in your brain. It's it's almost too good to be true, and it sounds like it wouldn't work, and it sounds a little touchy-feely even when I tell people about it because I get excited about it, but it's like,
Yeah.
you have this wonderful gift that you might not be utilizing, and it doesn't have to be a gym membership, it can be a walk,
Yep.
it can be I tell my students, "Y just go play ping pong." Like, I don't whatever you wanna do, because there's also the cool thing about physical activity is there's usually a social component to it.
Mhm.
And I feel like getting up and moving and inevitably connecting with someone else, it's not, I don't know if we can even really measure like how good a hug can be, or you know what I mean, or how good it can feel like playing on a team, playing Mario Kart vigorously. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. You can just there's something to be said for the social interaction. And is that something for you? Because like we're in a CrossFit gym right now, working out at home can be great, getting on a stairmaster, going on a walk on solo. But what's the difference when you actually come into like like here at CrossFit Tomorrow? I think the community is unique, but there's a lot of communities out there. Like, how does that feel different for you?
Yeah, I mean, first I wanna go back to your SSRI
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that conversation because I think it's really interesting, because I didn't actually know that. I knew that endorphins had a lot of benefits, but I didn't realize the comparison between an like meds and physical activity. I'm currently, to be completely transparent, I decided to get on an SSRI not because I'm severely depressed, but because of the anxiety element.
yeah.
I felt like I really couldn't function in the sense of like my day-to-day life, being a founder, working with other clients, I had to feel still function. Um, I didn't take off any time really after York passed away. I did, because it took us time to get him back to Greece and we had the funeral and then it was the holiday season but I was still working on 100 ml during that time because it was holiday.
Mm.
I know that sounds really crazy, but like I knew he would want me to continue working. The only thing I did during those periods though was go and do workouts.
Yeah.
But now after being back and immersed in the world and trying to, I mean, my life is completely flipped upside down for me. This is me personally speaking because we lived together. We had our traditions every single day. We had our routines every single day. We I moved us out of the apartment. I had not been back to that apartment since the night he passed away, and I moved us out January 6th. So, like, I my life was completely flipped upside down. And so for me, I couldn't fix anything else in my life. I couldn't save him. I couldn't fix him. I couldn't fix that situation. I couldn't make him better. Couldn't bring him back. At one point, I asked the paramedics if we could give him a new heart. They said no, obviously. But like, it's I couldn't fix it, and I can't fix I could the only thing I can and I can't control what's gonna happen. I don't have control over what's gonna happen. I thought I had control in my life, but then look what happened. So I don't have control. The one thing I can control is the responsibility of myself, and that is I can control to go and choose to go do physical activity. So that's what I did, and I really didn't do, like, group I did, like, reformer Pilates
Yeah,
or
yeah.
yoga. Anything, like, coming into CrossFit wouldn't have worked for me then. It felt very aggressive, and I needed, like, calm and, like but I would walk,
Yeah.
and what's crazy is I didn't like silence. I never sat in silence, I think, for 2 months. I was listening to podcasts, I was listening to, like, Gilmore Girls on my walks. I was it was even, like, just being on the streets of London was too quiet for me, which is crazy. So, I ended up going to classes where there was music. I wouldn't have to necessarily talk about introduce myself or anything. I love being part of a community. I used to be a part of a run club in New York City called Old Man Run Club, and I loved going there and meeting people. Then when I started coming back to Hillsdale more, and I started coming to CrossFit at Tomorrow, it was awesome. Everybody's so friendly. I looked forward to it. So over this period of time of grief is really important because you it's really lonely. It's uncomfortable to bring it up to people, so I don't always just come out and talk about it. I think this is the most I've ever actually talked about it. Um, I you don't necessarily it's a lonely journey because a lot of people you don't want people to have to have experienced the grief.
Oh, you don't wanna put your baggage on people.
No, I feel guilty when I, like, have to just blurt out, like, "My boyfriend died, he was 35," because then they're like, "Oh, what happened?" And then I don't want them to think that, like, he decided that. You know what I mean? So, I feel like I'm still figuring out a way to even communicate about it. But now, for me, I'm big on, like, I can sense the trust in other people. So I will open up about it to people in new communities, but coming now, I really love being part of a community. I love, like your point, a hug feels amazing. Um, and I think it's just kind of coming back into the world and really learning because grief doesn't go away. It's not something that you just heal. You don't heal. It's always a part. I forget somebody sent a quote to me, and it was like, "Grief feels like a huge boulder, and then as your world starts to regrow around it, it's a little pebble or a little rock you carry around in your pocket. It's still always gonna be there." And truly, that's how it's gonna be. Like, my heart I was saying that, like, my real estate in my heart right now belongs to Yorgos, and, like, it will always there will always be a plot of my heart that will belong to him. It doesn't just go away. It's not like it's a breakup and you heal from that. It's a very different experience, and his life is so intertwined with mine, and, you know, it's it's just it's something that it's okay to be open about, and if you ever come across somebody who is going through a grieving experience, don't just say sorry. Ask them, like, "How are you dealing with it?" Kind of like what you've been asking me today, because that's the best way for them to feel like you genuinely care and you're not uncomfortable about it.
Yeah, your grief story. So we have different grief stories because my dad died, but I knew he was going to die.
Mhm,
So in a weird way, when he got diagnosed with cancer,
mhm,
and they were like, because he died 5 weeks after his diagnosis, but
mhm,
we knew like going into it
mhm,
like this. I mean, he tried to prolong his life, but I don't
mhm,
think he was ever under the impression, realistically,
mhm,
that he was going to that he was actually going to make it. And so I think in that 5 weeks, I wish we had longer, but that it's time to process. So I feel like for me, and I don't know how the rest of my family was, because it's honestly not something we talk about a ton. My grief was on the front end. It was weird because like then you feel. You tell it. I don't talk about this stuff very often.
Well, thank you for opening.
I think the hard part is like the guilt,
Yeah.
because you're like, like thanks. He you kind of go through it, and I don't even remember even being sad during
Mhm,
those 5 weeks. It was
mhm.
like stuff's got to get done.
Yeah,
The preparations have to get made. Things have to get there's just things that have to get done, and there is an inevitable there is an inevitability to it. And uh, I think maybe like having been like deployed and things like that probably helped with that, because it's like, okay, people could die today. That's just like there's just something that's
right.
going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like inevitably, like yeah, there's at some point today we will load a casket into the plane and
yeah,
send it home, and it's just like one of those things that you do.
yeah.
So you can kind of like slip into that. Well, I'm not like I want to be like task oriented, but I feel like that pressure built up to a point where like when he died, it was like, oh, that pressure's gone. You know what I mean? Like it was almost like I'd kind of been through the grief,
Yeah,
and I didn't have that anymore. And it
yeah.
was like I was like a weight lifted off my shoulders that I didn't even realize was on, because it had like been mounting. But then like the guilt sets in, because you're like, I should be like, I should feel a certain way. You know what I mean? Like I shouldn't be relieved that he's dead in a way. Like I think that's like a really weird thing. I feel like I don't know if that's something that, because yours is different because you didn't get
No.
5 weeks ahead of time building up to it.
No, and to be honest, and I know this is gonna sound crazy, like, there's always time, and I said this over and over and over again to my sister, because we experienced I mean, my grandmother was 91, she lived a beautiful life, and she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and the same thing I mean, she was given 3 months, but she lived much longer, but she didn't do, any, um, treatment for it, and I felt the same way.
Yeah.
Like, I was there when she passed away, and it felt like a relief because you're like, she's no longer in pain, but then there's that guilt of like, I didn't cry about my grandmother until 3 weeks after she passed away, and it's because I felt like I lost a mother, but I didn't make that connection, right? With Yorgos, it was I saw him that morning, and we went on our normal morning walk, and he called it's interesting you talked about the 3 different types of panic attack, heart attack, and he called me that afternoon stressed, and he's had panic attacks before, and it was panicky, but I was like, "Call the ambulance." But again, I was like, "Is your arm hurting?"
Yeah.
Signs, and I almost think that we as humans aren't actually trained well enough to see those signs, um, and we don't know and that's frustrating, we don't know if that's the case, but I said to my sister after he passed away, I was like, "I almost just wish, like, I wish there were signs, like, not even that I wanted because it's horrible in either way. You're losing like, somebody who you love and who's important to you. It doesn't make it I don't think actually, if you look at either one, I don't know which one I would actually wanna pick because that guilt is horrendous feeling, but also the sudden of your life changing is also horrible because you're like, this is not fair. And it's the amount of anger and frustration, like the one feeling I have constantly on a day-to-day basis is frustration. I'm having to do things that I didn't think I would have to do if he didn't pass away. And it's I think it's a different it's all horrible. I would never honest to God, could say I can't pick if I would want somebody to pass away suddenly because I think that I wouldn't have been able to handle seeing him in the pain. And I've read grief books and I've read different stories of, because I am 35, I'm 36, but when he passed away, we were both 35. We're in this very interesting time in our lives. And it's frustrating because now I'm having to start all over again, and I don't want it. I didn't wanna start over again. He was my person. We were each other's people. We had a future together. So it's I don't know if I would want to see that, because I read a book about, this woman who was in her 30s and her fiancé got diagnosed with a very rare lung cancer, and they beat it, and then it came back, and it was during COVID, and then he ended up catching COVID and passing away, and she was in her 30s, and it's a really strange time to lose. It's horrible to lose at any point, but it's a really strange time when you lose a significant other because you have these plans. But yeah, we didn't get to have that time, but that just wasn't what was in his plans, I guess.
Yeah, I think you hit on something before too when you were talking about you can't fix it. It doesn't get better.
Mm-mm.
You obviously can't bring someone back. But I feel like that's an interesting thing, something that I talk to patients a lot about, not about grief, but just about like because if people are in pain, regardless of what it is, they want something fixed. And it's like, well, you have to think about the possibility that you're not broken or that whatever it is isn't fixable. You know what I mean? Like maybe we can't change the scenario. We can't change the environment.
Right.
We can't change the tissue. We can't, you know what I mean? We can't change your age. We can't unhave a heart attack. Like there's so many things that, okay, this can't change, but we can change your response to it.
Mhm.
And I think for like people with anxiety, that can be like a big thing. It's like, well, how do we look at the stimulus
Mhm.
that's provoking you and how do we change your response to it? You know what I mean? And if you're gonna go down in a if your plane is crashing, have a panic attack.
Yeah.
Everyone's having, you know what I mean? That's totally appropriate. But if you're not gonna die, how do we change your reaction to things? And I don't know how that works with anxiety because I'm not a mental health provider,
Mhm.
but I know how it works with physical pain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if someone's like, "Well, I have arthritis," that's like, "Okay, we're not getting rid of it then.
Mhm.
There's no going back."
Right.
So how do we take what you have and change the way you react to it? And there's it was an article, I use it with my students that was published in, I think, the British Journal of Sports Medicine a number of years ago. And it was talking about health and talking about the World Health Organization's definition of health, which when this was written, this may have written in like the early 2000s. So maybe this has changed, but it was like at the time, the World Health Organization, the definition came from like the 40s or 50s. So it was quite old.
Mhm.
Um, and they said, "Look, there's some things we have to change about it, but what we would add, which I think is interesting, and they say, just as environmental scientists describe the health of the earth as a capacity of a complex system to maintain a stable environment within a relatively narrow range, we propose the formulation of health as the ability to adapt and self-manage." So from that perspective, you could have diabetes, you could have had a heart attack, you could have had severe physical trauma, you could have had a sudden death in the family, you could have lost multiple family, you know what I mean? You could be going through so much stuff. If you can get yourself to a point where you can adapt and self-manage and it won't break you and you can keep going on, they would say you're a healthy person, which is interesting because there's a lot of people out there you're think, well, that's not a healthy person.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
how well are they able to cope with physical pain and with injury and with loss and with stress and with anxiety And with all the temptations out there, how well are they, or do they have addictions? Do they have all this other stuff? And if the answer is no, and they're able to keep going and moving through it, they're actually technically per this, and this isn't research, this was just an opinion, like they're quite that's a healthy person. And I think if you're thinking about, grief, you can't bring people back. We change that, but we can change our reaction to the inevitable reality that is loss.
Yep.
And again, I'm going outside of my lane because I'm not a mental health provider, but we could go back to it. And it's like, okay, you've had surgery and you've had your spine fused. That's not changing, but we can change the way you move and the way you react to that. You've had a knee replacement. We can change the way you interact with the world around you and help you get through that. If you've, or you don't have a diagnosable injury, you just have pain.
Yeah.
Well, we have to look at like all the different ways that you could change and that you could adapt and that you could self-manage. And there might be nutrition.
Yep.
It's probably going to have something to do with sleep. It's probably going to have to do with the way you deal with stress. There's going to be a physical thing to it. There's going to be looking at your relationships. There's going to be definitely addressing your fears and your concerns. So if we don't look at all of those things, how can we expect you to be able to adapt and self-manage? And I feel like just from my own like grief and guilt perspective, I think that's an important way to just get through it. And I think that for me, that's a big part of like Build Beyond.
Mhm.
And if people haven't listened, I have a couple episodes on it. I mention every once in a while that the name actually comes from my dad because he was a builder. And he didn't like to be known as a craftsman or anything like that because he just thought that was weird. He's like, I just build things. And he was really good at building things and he had a great attention to detail. And so, and he would typically, this was Marissa came up with this, he would typically build things beyond what you would expect. So if you're like, hey, I need something kind of simple to like prop this up,
Mhm.
he would come back and it would be like decorative. And you're like, that, and like it could hold like 10 times the amount of weight that you needed it to. And he'd, well, I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
And so I think about him most often when I'm with patients because a lot of times I'm like, because obviously, like, if you die 5 weeks after a
Mhm.
diagnosis, they missed something. People missed stuff for a
Yeah.
long time, and not that that would have extended his life necessarily. So I don't want to put the blame on them, but he is not the type of personality. Had he been a healthcare provider, I don't think he would have missed those things.
Right.
So the name Bill Beyond is really like referencing him and his job and his ability to build things beyond what people would expect, and then to provide that attention to detail that not only was lacking in his healthcare, but also I think he would have provided. It's an interesting opportunity, and I think about him most often when I don't want to be at work anymore. And I'm wearing 16 hats, and I have someone coming in, and it's like I have to snap in and be 100% present. I got to let all of that go,
Yeah.
and I really have to listen to this person because this might be my dad. You know what I mean? Like, it might be someone who, like, legitimately needs help,
Yeah.
and that's so rare. Like, I think I've had one person come to me with undiagnosed cancer where I obviously don't diagnose it, but I was
Right.
like, "Oh, this doesn't seem right."
Right.
But I've had some other stuff, appendectomies where people it shows up as weird pain.
Yeah.
There have been some, like, but I think it's, like, maybe 1%. It's pretty low, but I don't wanna miss the 1% if it's potentially fatal
No.
or is gonna require surgery, but also the 99% who come in who don't have something, like, seriously wrong with them, to them, their pain, like, it doesn't matter. Like, they don't know if they're having a heart attack or if it's like, they don't know what's going on, and there's this confusion, and there's this lack of, like, I don't see a path forward, like, I don't see a way through this forest. How do I do this? And I think a lot of times in healthcare that just gets lost because it's like, "Well, just take this pill," or for someone like me, like, "Well, I'll just crack your back, and then we'll do some exercises, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal," and it's like, well, is it to them? So I think that's empathy is like, well, how does it look from your perspective? Because then when you flip it around and you're like, "Oh, man, that's what it looks like from where you're sitting? Oof." Like, I get now I see why you're so stressed out, or I see why you have so much anxiety.
Yeah.
And so being able to change that perspective for me, which really, as I said, comes from, I think, working alongside mental health professionals where I'm like, "Oh, dang,
Yeah.
like, you guys have really good communication skills." I mean, like, really good. I wanna be able to connect with people like that, and it becomes so valuable.
I think to your point, it's to from experience, and I am far from a medical provider, but you brought up a lot of really good points in this last conversation. One, to try to really understand what that person feels. When you're feeling pain, whether that's psychological pain, physical pain,
Yeah.
it is so consuming. There are so many times in the past few months where I described that I feel like the pain is so bad. I'm in a dark hole and I'm in a tunnel and I can't see the light. And when you're feeling that pain as the patient, it's so consuming because you're so desperate to find a solution and you're so desperate to try to find anything that will give you that light. So to have somebody like you on your side that you're sitting there and you're being like, "Tell me, like, everything. Let's get into it," is so great because there aren't a lot of people out there that are like that. I mean, my therapist is like that, but, she kinda has to be.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that I wanted to just go back on too is the coping mechanisms of things, because I was actually having a conversation with my therapist a couple weeks ago, and I said, and she's somebody I've been in therapy for many, many years. I think I think it's great. But I was telling her after I have been on an SSRI for the last 8 weeks, and I was really scared of taking it. I grew up in a world where we're very conservative. We don't talk about our mental health very often. Now I have forced my family to really just open up because they kind of just got thrown into this. And I was really hesitant because I didn't want it to change me. I didn't want it to, you know, and I spoke to my therapist, I spoke to my medical provider, my doctor, and really asked them weigh pros and cons. I was saying to my therapist the other day, I was like, I feel like I'm cheating grief by
Mhm.
taking these.
Yeah.
I've been connected with a lot of other widows. I've been connected with a lot of other people that have lost people suddenly. Some people have gone on it and some of them haven't. And then I had my week last week where I had a full blown meltdown. I was meeting two investors the morning I just sobbed. And I was like, I had to give myself a pep talk and be like, you got to pull it together. Like, I just woke up, crippling anxiety. Then my therapist, had a call with her last week and she was like, "So do you feel like you're cheating grief now?" And I said, "No, I don't." And she said, "Okay, great." And, you know, for me, how I look at it is it's, n- I'm not encouraging anybody to get on anything. Speak to your medical practitioner, speak to your doctor, speak to your therapist. I'm just speaking from my experience. And it's been interesting being on them because it's helped me manage a little bit with the anxiety and the fear. I mean, I will say I will sleep and have anxiety dreams of the night, and I will just continuously think about the night he passed away. I'm now starting to see a trauma specialist because it is traumatic what encountered. Not every day do you walk in and find the love of your life on the floor, face down, and not being able to, bring him back. And I did CPR, and it was traumatic because I wasn't expecting that. And it is and when I was meeting with the doctor about it, I said, how are we gonna do this?" And she said, "We really are gonna rework to rewire your brains. That way, when you get triggers of anxiety or triggers in the world, because every day there's triggers, it's not gonna go directly to that horrible night for you.
Yeah.
We're gonna re-trigger it so you can learn how to cope with this." And so to my point, or to your point, excuse me, is it's interesting that article that you were reading about of coping, because and seeing that person as a healthy person, it's because I don't feel like I'm an unhealthy person right now. Mentally, could I be a little healthier? Yes, but at the same time, I think that there are I'll report back, and tell you how this trauma therapy goes. I'm terrified because I don't wanna relive it, but, it is something that our brain is triggered to go back to those it different things trigger you to go back to great memories or scary memories. And so it's about finding ways of coping that type of pain. And that's why I agree with you so much of, finding the pain and how can we manage it? How can we address it? And there's different ways of going about that.
From the anxiety standpoint,
Mhm,
the psychiatrist who wrote this book, he said the elegance of exercise as a way to deal with anxiety in everyday life and in the form of of a disorder is
mhm,
that it works both on the body and the brain.
mhm,
So it provides a distraction, it
mhm,
reduces muscle tension, it
mhm.
builds brain resources, it teaches a different outcome, it reroutes your circuits, which is what you're talking about, it improves your resilience, and it sets you free. And he has for the students, my students, for the anxiety chapter, I actually just there's a court case and I just read it to them. And the dialogue is so powerful. And basically, there's a woman who's this guy's patient,
Mhm,
and she realizes that her husband is going to divorce her, and she came from a divorced family, and so she doesn't want to repeat that. She freaks out. She has a panic attack, and she threatens to kill herself, and like just takes off. It's like crazy, you know what I mean? So she loses custody of the kids,
yeah.
obviously. So now they're in court, and the psychiatrist is being cross-examined essentially, and the lawyer for the husband, she is zoning in on the fact that like the wife is not taking antidepressants anymore. She electively came off of them, and he says, but it was under my supervision, and it's because she's exercising. And so they kind of, you know, they nitpick that a little bit, but he's able to articulate. And I said, she basically she's like lives in an apartment
Mhm,
away from her family, and for
mhm,
like an hour a week under supervision she
mhm.
gets to see her kids. So she's not like she's completely removed from her
Yep.
life. And so she got an elliptical, she started doing yoga, and he was like, I remember he was it's like a little bit by little bit she started to get her life back. And it was like she wasn't like a rat cowering in a cage anymore. She like would like you would think that she's come out of her shell.
Mm.
And so she was able to not change the situation because you can't undo what she did.
Right.
And he doesn't say whether she got her kids back or not. So her situation didn't change at all, but it was her reaction to the situation. And I think a lot of times students connect with that because they deal with anxiety, but I try and make it a little bit more real because it's like I don't think really young people would understand as much because it's like, how does she reintegrate with her friends? Because inevitably, a lot of her closest friends also have kids. So if someone in my friend group did something like that, how do I trust them around my kids? Even if I really like them, I've never been in that situation. So like, how do you So she's obviously gotta be well aware of that.
Right.
She's out of her house, she's in an apartment, she doesn't get to see her kids. She's not going to any social events anymore and interacting with her old friends. Even if they're not going to judge her, she thinks they're going to judge her. It's
Right.
very real to her. She's basically in hell, and it's like the worst possible scenario for her. What do you do other than sit there and, like, drink and take medication? Like, I don't know how anyone would react to that, and this doctor was saying, well, through exercise she was able to little by little over time change the way she reacted to it. And I feel like it's something that intuitively you just picked up on quickly with grief is like I got to start moving. And I don't and even if you didn't understand the neuroscience behind it and all the other stuff, it's like this idea that movement can help so much and it can help with mental health, it can help with physical health. I mean, that there's the list of benefits like improving mood, improving sleep,
Yeah.
those are huge. It lowers your risk for, like, every chronic disease you could
Yep.
think of, heart disease, type
Yep.
2 diabetes, some types of cancer.
Yeah.
It can lower your risk for Alzheimer's and dementia. it can boost your memory and your retention. It boosts your immune system. It can slow, like, it lowers the rate of infection and speeds the recovery and lessens the symptoms. You know what I mean? Like, boosts your energy, like, all these things that you would want, where if I said, "I've got a supplement that can do all of this," you'd be like, "That's not a real
Yeah.
thing." But that's movement, and it doesn't have to be in a gym. It could be walking, it can be anything you want it to be. So for people who are dealing with grief, they're dealing with depression, they're dealing with anxiety, they're also rolling up to a chiropractic office a couple times a week to get their backs cracked because they have low back pain. You know what I mean? You've got all these things going on. There actually is one thing, it won't fix any of it. It's
Oh,
not a fix, it's not a cure, but it has effect and it's free.
yeah.
Like, so from, like, a medical economy standpoint, it's just like, and then there's no side effects other than, like, happiness
Yeah.
and feeling better about yourself. You know what I mean? There's so much positivity, and you're possibly you're self-managing. So you are, being able to adapt and self-manage, even if you're still taking meds,
Yeah.
even if you're going to therapy, even if, your loved one's still dead or your kids aren't there anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you are taking control and you have some agency. And I feel like that's why physical activity and exercise and movement can be so powerful. And that's why I think the frustrating thing about healthcare is that a lot of times, like, every healthcare provider is gonna be like, "Yeah, it's great, but do you promote it?" I mean, I have a pamphlet.
Yeah.
Do you exercise? Like, how many doctors do you go to? Like, probably don't work out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just think that there's lip service where, like, you should do these things, but then there's holding someone's hand and being like, "This is, like, let's figure out a way to actually make that happen. Like, what's the best first step for you?" It wouldn't have been CrossFit. Some people, it would have been.
Yeah.
Some people, if I'm like, "Why don't you go do yoga?" They'd be like, I have no," but if I'm like, "Well, let's go turn up heavy metal and you're gonna slam some
Yeah.
barbells," and they're like, "Yeah, that's not," you know what I mean? Like, I wanna high five some people and get sweaty. So
Yeah.
everyone's gonna have, like, a different first step.
Totally. I think, honestly, for me, in the beginning of, like, that first, like, 4 weeks, because all I did was literally I would try to get sleep, I would wake up, I would I would book a class, I
Yeah.
would walk there, and then I'd go to my friends, like, our mutual friends, and he's one of my really good friends, studio where we kind of just, like, I would hang out with him because I didn't wanna be alone, and we would work together on, working with the Greek consulate, and, like, it was just the one time for myself, and to that point of, like, the woman, like, even though she's alone, her doing physical activity is able it's helping her become a better version of herself, and even though I wasn't trying to become a better version of myself, I just even though I wasn't working on client work or anything like that, but it was a 1 hour of my to myself where I wasn't making sure everybody else in Yorgos's life or his family or even my family or my friends, I wasn't checking in on everybody else. I didn't have my cell phone. I had to focus on not falling off the reformer machine, or,
Yeah.
like, I was counting in my head, so I wasn't thinking about how sad I was, and I worked out until the day we went to Greece for his funeral, and even the morning of his funeral, I was in Greece with 4 of my best friends, and before we met up with everybody else, and we hiked up to this amazing hill that overlooks all of Athens, and my girlfriends and I did a morning workout. I mean, it was a pathetic morning workout, but just moving our bodies and, like, and being able to just get some of that endorphin hit really helped bring strength to me for what I had coming for the rest of the day. And I don't know how our bodies are insane. The chemical makeup is insane, but it again, it goes back to me stepping on that Stairmaster the day after he passed away, putting one step in front of the other for 20 minutes, just made me realize how resilient I am. And I'm not saying that you have to be strong because there was a lot of times I wasn't strong. And I actually hate when people tell me that I'm so strong during all of this because the one thing I don't feel is strong, like in a lot of different ways. I am a strong person,
Yeah.
but like but then it's interesting, like, you being able just to put yourself through going 10 minutes of exercise when you really don't want to, you're building up that resilience and being like, "I can do anything." Why not just go out and do a 10-minute walk? Because to your point, you're getting so much you're getting so many benefits from it, and I wasn't thinking of the benefits. I was like, "This is an hour to myself, and I know I'll physically feel stronger after I do an hour of reformer Pilates," which then it was like a metaphor for me. That's, like, how I had to look at it.
I like the word resilience
Mm,
because you can be weak and
mhm,
resilient,
mhm.
you know?
That's how I felt. I felt weak and resilient, but everybody around me kept saying to me, "You're so strong." And I was like, "But there's no other option. There's literally no other option how I'm supposed to show up in this. I could be in bed and not show up, but I was showing up for" sorry, I'm getting emotional. I was showing up for him, you know, because he didn't get to show up for himself and his family and his friends and his family are amazing, but as his partner, I just felt so responsible to show up for him in that way.
Yeah.
And so for me, in a way, it was going and working out because that was one time of the day I felt strong for a short amount of time. Because then I would be on the couch crying and thinking, how is this even possible that this is happening? So i- it moving your body is magical in so many ways because it allows you to realize how much life you could get to continue to live and also how much you get to do for yourself and it's not only just the physical benefits, but it's also the mental benefits of it too.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who cried on this episode.
No, I couldn't do this podcast and not let like one tear out.
So, but I think this is a good way to end it and to cap it up because I think I don't think I could have scripted this better, but cultivating resilience. You know what I mean? So if you're dealing with physical pain, whether it's tissue damage, whether there's an injury, or there's trauma or not, it doesn't matter. If you're dealing with emotional pain, whether it's grief, loss, guilt, depression, anxiety, stress, or more than likely, if you're a human, it's a combination of a lot of those with some other stuff sprinkled on top. You don't have to be strong. You don't have to be capable. You just have to cultivate resilience. And that is just about taking one step at a time,
Mhm.
which I think ties back into the business aspect of
Yeah,
like you're a CEO of your own life at that point, and you just have to be resilient and keep going and just keep moving. So I like that. I think that like the concept of being resilient, I think that's like it's pretty intuitive.
you really summed that up very well.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank
Thank you for being
you.
a guest. And
This is awesome. I'm really excited for what you're doing. You're doing some amazing things, so keep going.
well, thanks.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
thank you.
All right.
That was awesome. Thanks, Chris.